Hello, everybody. How are you doing? I'm Will. It's good to be here. I personally want to thank Chris and Paula and Bill for setting this up today, particularly Paula, who has gone above and beyond for helping set up something that you'll see shortly. This has not been a normal Houdini day for us. But anyway, thank you so much for having me. I'm a creative director and a 3D artist, and a bit of an experimenter. I think I spent most of my Houdini time trying to find a way to break it, and so far I've failed. But I really am going to keep trying, and I am pretty excited about finding new things, new ways to use Houdini. You might have heard me stumble when I said my name a minute ago. That's because I normally introduce myself as Will from the Mill. And I had been there for 8 years until a fateful day a few months ago when we got news, pretty much on a Friday night, from email from our friends in the US, our colleagues, that the Mill was no more. So Technicolor, our parent company, shut down. We were all out of a job. I can see there's at least one other Mill colleague of mine here. It was a pretty awful time. It was also a really weird time because we were extremely busy, at least I was. I was in the middle of a big project, an immersive theater show about Elvis, where not only was I making about 60 minutes of very high resolution content, I was also creating the digital AI Elvis that would perform in the show. And that's still going on, not with us anymore. I wish I could show it to you, but obviously there have been some delays because of various reasons. But that's kind of the stuff I'm really interested in, just finding new and interesting output for video and visual effects content. Obviously I was out of a job for a while. I've now joined another studio called We're 17, and we are opening a new arm within that studio that does experiential work like the Elvis show and big screen stuff like Sphere and OuterNet, all that kind of thing. So yeah, I mean, it's something I'm really excited about. I'm going to be, have some ownership in that, and I love those people, and I'm just really excited about the future. So the last 2 months have been a bit of a nightmare, but now looking ahead to something that I'm really excited about. We're going to keep on doing the kind of stuff that I've been doing for a while. We're doing output for like the Olympics. That was the world's largest LED floor at the time, 150 meters across. We did that for the Winter Olympics closing ceremony in China. Making a lot of content for OuterNet, which is this really interesting 3D space, visual space in London. It's free to enter. You just walk in right outside of the tube, this big immersive space. And we're actually about to release our next piece for OuterNet, which is coming out next week. I wish I could show it to you, but I can't. But it's based on the artwork of this artist, Hiroshiga, a Japanese woodblock printing artist. We've brought one of these artworks to life in OuterNet, and we're pretty excited about it. I talk a lot about how Houdini changed me as an artist, and as a thinker as well. It changed my concept of what it means to be a creative person. It's not just a one-way street anymore. It's not just the art you make. It's maybe the art you make and you share on social media, and then you hear back about, you get comments back. It's also about being part of a community where you share your knowledge, you hear back from other artists, you create tools that other people use. So I've really changed in the way I work from this time I first picked up Houdini, from being basically a motion graphics artist to now someone who's part of a community and creating tools and really getting involved in the process and actually sharing the way I think and the way I make tools inside Houdini, which I think is pretty cool. Not the way I make tools in Houdini. That's up to you to decide whether that's cool or not. But I think it's cool that we do that and we share our things. It's also changed the way I make stuff. So I've become really fascinated by data-driven art, basically letting data or some other kind of input change what we make and let that tell the story. That could be weather that makes a painting, data from your wearable that makes some digital clothes that you could have worn if there was ever a metaverse, but doesn't look like there's going to be. We made shirts that were visualizing the data about hate, the way female footballers were treated online. And that we built a visualization system last year that used EEG data to show what it looked like when you looked at a piece of art. And we built some rather complex ways of interpreting that so that we could create some cool animation. The animation was made in a coded application, but all the design work and the original thinking behind building that I did inside Houdini. And that enabled us to build a project recently to tell the story of malaria, and basically the 100-year, very complex story of malaria. And just to build something that was capable of featuring in a lot of different spaces. So we could shoot a commercial, and then that same piece of art could go to another place like OutterNet or even to a TV without requiring any new rendering or formatting. And be truthful, actually contain the original data that we sourced working with academic partners about the history of malaria. Now, I really hope this is going to play, because I'm going to show it to you here now.
Right now, malaria kills a child every minute. Working with world-leading data scientists, we built this interactive artwork to show how we can stop malaria and save lives.
Let's do this.
Malaria is one of the world's biggest killers, but with the right technology, experts like these know how to beat it.
Dr. Charles, over to you. Okay.
For over 60 years, the world has been winning the battle against malaria. Thanks to global collaboration, millions of lives have been saved and many countries eliminated malaria. But recently, the world took its eye off the ball. The perfect storm began to rage. Mosquitoes started getting smarter, weather patterns became less predictable, funding slowed down, and years of progress began to unravel, putting millions of children's lives at risk.
Let's see what we can do about this.
It's time for our biggest ever push. Malaria can be defeated, but it will take a combined effort. With the tools available today, we can save millions more lives. But if we invest in the tools of tomorrow, we'll have the chance to end the disease in our lifetime. Together, we could reach zero malaria.
One of the things I've been making for a long time is a series of tools that help you make something that looks like oil painting in Houdini. Made it a long time ago. I called it Stroke It. It was very heavily geometry based, so basically trying to manipulate or create the look of oil painting inside Houdini just by creating very high resolution meshes and then disrupting them in a way that made them feel like oil painting, like kind of blobby oil painting. The issue I had with that is that very, very high dense meshes were also really hard to manipulate. They were very slow to process and actually didn't give as much detail as I wanted. So I wanted to figure out a way to create that detail inside Houdini without using very heavy geometry, and that's where we are here. This is version 2.0 of the Stroke It tool, and it uses Copernicus, the new COP system in Houdini, to basically generate live texture maps that are completely controllable. You can basically apply all the same controls that you applied before, change the bristles, change how blobby it is. There's a color system, but it all happens inside COPs and renders in Karma, so it renders really fast. And it's quite cool. It gives you a lot of control. There you can see the interface over on the right-hand side. You can make it as detailed as you want because there's no kind of issue with geometry density or anything like that. And then there's this side of it, which is something I've been trying to figure out for a while, is basically how to turn photographs into something that looks like kind of palette knife oil paintings. And this is done all inside COPs. So basically, it's this palette knife look that's applied to an image using distorted geometry inside Houdini. I'll show you a little bit about how that works in a second. But basically within this system, you can mess around with the color logic system I put in, give you really kind of interesting control, the way the color expands and whether you can get a lot of different kind of, like you have mixed color on your palette before you laid it down. You can play with the buildup of the stroke. You can mess around with kind of how intense the distortion is of that. You can change the opacity, how dry the brush looked, all that kind of stuff. The height map is always just being generated live in COPS and then being adding to the displacement map as it renders in Karma, and it's all extremely fast. The palette knife effect, a little bit different, uses kind of a similar technique I applied before to something called autotrace. It just creates a lot of little islands of color. Takes an input photo and automatically turns it into something that makes it look like it's created with a palette knife. And I'm really excited about this because, I mean, I like the way it looks, but also because it's opened my mind up to a whole new way of using Houdini. And basically that's because this is live texture map creation. So I'll try to explain how that works. Under the hood here is a really messed up piece of geometry. And basically this is what my tool is creating, this really messed up piece. That wouldn't render. That would just look awful if you tried to render it. The topology would be awful. It would just have terrible, nasty edges. But what's actually happening inside is this is going into COPS to create the texture maps that then create the image. So basically, it's kind of like you take that whole process of creating like a high density mesh, then you create from that, you generate displacement maps, and then you apply those to a low quality mesh. And previously you do that in several different steps. This is all happening live. This is happening in, well, it takes a little while to process the geometry, but it's all happening within one SOP setup inside Houdini, and basically is giving you sort of that control without ever having to render anything out. It all happens inside. The system actually rasterizes the geometry and live turns that into a texture map. And you get something that I think looks really neat, but I'm really excited to see where else you can go with this, because, for instance, we were looking earlier at some like, toon style stuff. You could really generate some amazing toon style rendering inside Houdini using this technique by basically just taking the geometry and on every frame passing it through COPS to generate a new texture map for that. And it's all happening procedurally and at any resolution you want. So the really exciting part about this, and the reason I'm actually here today, is we're going to check this out afterwards. I brought it here so we can play around. You guys can draw some brushstrokes if you want. And then after that, we're giving it away for free. So SideFX is going to put it online, and you can download the whole tool set, have a mess around with it, learn from it, hopefully. Every little node in it has, well, just about has a sticky note next to it explaining what it does. So it isn't just a thing to mess around with. It's also a really cool way to learn, and also perhaps get into my head, which is maybe not what you want to do, but you know, at least you can kind of see how I apply things and how I think about generating these systems. And again, that's like what it's all about for me now, is not just making art and putting it out there, but building systems that friends can use, and we can all kind of benefit from that. We can share our updates and, you know, make it better as we go. So that's my pick for today. But after that, I will be upstairs at a workstation while we're having beers and wine, and we can all play around with it. I can show you how it works. I'm very excited about that. Thanks very much.
Hello, everybody. Let me just open up Keynote. All right. Hello, my name is Jan-Paul Dubbelman. I'm a Dutch independent artist, and my style I would like to describe as calm. Thankfully, this does play this time. So you might, if you know my work, you know this type of work. I make a lot of flowers, and I make a lot of these natural elements, but someone once described it as considered, which I think was a really nice compliment. The way I like to make my work is to create a system in Houdini that looks very natural. I do all my work on a laptop, right? So I'm traveling a lot. The last time I met the Houdini team, I was in Thailand. I spent most of my year in Asia, mostly Thailand and South Korea, but I'll come back to that in a second. So, calm. When you look at my work, why I use flowers is that when you show a flower to everyone in the world, basically, you will get a very similar feeling. And so I'm very attracted to this type of attractive work. You can show this here, you can show this in Asia, you can show this in America, you can show this basically anywhere in the world, and you should get a very similar feeling. So that's why I would call myself more of an independent artist than maybe a motion designer. All my work is very calm, very relaxed. And not every client likes this. Most of the time they just want a 30-second beautiful video about their product. But there are some clients out there that really want this, and I'll show you some of my work. So when I do an exhibition, I love my work to be like this, with someone in front of it, maybe looking at the artwork. That would be nice. But even if the artwork is just in the space and people are experiencing the moment of when they're there, and just the artwork should sort of ambiently add to the experience, right? So this is one of the exhibitions I did. Sometimes when flowers get very big, they get a bit scary. So I'm trying to still make everything feel quite soft and approachable. This is one of my exhibitions in Korea, in Busan. So sometimes I'm invited to put my work on very big screens. Last year my goal was to get my work on very big screens in Asia, and that worked. This year my goal is to actually make money with my work, so there will be this work in progress. But my most recent project was a very big, difficult and very rewarding project for Studio Drift. It's a company in the Netherlands. If you know them, then you know that they make very beautiful work, and they do a lot of things with flowers, but they don't use digital animation in their work much. And the reason is because it is this type of work that I made for them. So I made 12 different flowers for them, but the simulation was 6 minutes long. So it's a 6-minute simulation of a flower opening, looking at you, and then closing again. So this is just a small slice. You can see that they are moving, at least I hope so, but very gently, right? And so most of the time when you see people using Houdini, they're trying to get this beautiful shot, but I'm here to tell you that if you let it go for 6 minutes, the simulation, then it will go. So Vellum is stable enough that you don't get any glitches. Once you have all the settings dialed in, it will just work. So I'm going to go through this quite quickly, but just like what Will was saying, the idea about this short presentation is to sort of entice you to talk to us right after, because we will be there and we will be sharing some of the setups. And so I used Copernicus and COPS to do all the texturing. I really like to generate veins. I don't know if you've noticed, but basically everything that's grown has veins, so I'm trying to put veins everywhere. This is with COPS. I don't know if you can tell, but these have these little veins going through. I have this philosophy that maybe your eyes don't see those details, but your brain sees the details. So now I'm trying to put veins everywhere because your brain wants to kind of feel like it might have been alive. So a lot of these models, I want you to keep in mind is that these models, the pictures that you're seeing here, they need to come alive. They need to breathe for 6 minutes long. So all of these interactions that all these petals have, they need to be both very beautiful, but they also need to work, right? You cannot have any intersection going on here. So when I was placing these little flowers on top of the seeds of the sunflower, I had to keep in mind that this needs to breathe for 6 minutes long, and it became quite a complicated simulation. Also very large, so I think just the simulation was about 2 terabytes for this project. Originally they had 64 flowers in mind, and I said, maybe next year. But this is what it looks like when it's rendered with Copernicus creating all the textures for the material. So all of this is Copernicus generating these textures. Everything is reacting to each other. All of these textures are generated procedurally, and they're reacting to each other as well. So I think this picture especially is a good representation of what we were trying to do. Studio Drift is an amazing client. They are very good at their art direction, and in this case I was able to use my style of making flowers to do the exhibition. There's a lot more to do to this, but I'm not allowed to tell you, but maybe another time. So my career basically is this and this put together. So I really don't like waiting. So I do simulations, but I only do simulations when all the animation and all the modeling and everything is done. I saw some very beautiful simulations here, and I'm just thinking, like, how long were you not able to use your computer? I'm sure that, so I'm a freelancer, so I'm an independent artist, so I just have my little laptop here, so I don't have a beautiful simulation farm over there. So I want to keep things interactive. But there's another point here. My clients also don't know how to code, and they also don't like to wait. So what I'm trying to do is to create systems that I can show my client and that they can play with, and it can go sort of back and forth, because the clients I work with, they really want to have full control over the system that we're building together. So one of the things that exemplifies that is making drone shows. So this is also for Studio Drift. They art directed this whole project, and I was asked if I could make a system in Houdini to create drone shows. So we were able to do that. And what I hope you see here is that compared to other drone shows, this is very organic. A lot of drone shows are basically a beautiful object, slowly turning in space with some light effects, but Studio Drift has a very organic style, so we wanted to keep things flowing. This is sped up a bit, I have to be honest, but they do go really fast. So this is what it looks like. This is basically the art direction from Studio Drift. They had this idea about how they should fly all the drones. They made a beautiful moving storyboard I could use. And then it's up to me to figure out how we can get these drones at the right position while keeping it natural. And the way I thought of doing that is to basically create different tools that drag a point cloud over a line. You can see sometimes they're quite long, sometimes they're quite smooshed, and sometimes they're quite large, and sometimes they're quite thin. And all of these drones are basically flying over their curve. And then this tool gives it the speed and also the thickness. And then the tool here on the left gives it the color, right? So this is based on where it is on the curve, where it is on its flight. And then the one on the right is the color applied again to the drones. And what this enabled us to do is to really finally exactly point where we want which color to exist. And it's completely interactive. You could scroll through this whole, if you, please come over and I will show you how that looks. But it's a completely interactive experience. And that's so important when you work with a client who has a very specific artistic sense. And so that was a lot of fun. This is what it looks like in the Play Blast. I'm just going to skip through this. And then I just want to leave you with something that I think is important, because the previous speakers here, they are basically the top of the industry. Extremely talented people who somehow breathe VEX and breathe programming. So I know a little bit of code, but I really don't know how to code. You could see also that you can use ChatGPT to get you going a bit. But what I want to emphasize is that Houdini is the software that you should use if you want to create your own tools. So I make a lot of flowers. So one of the tools I like to create is sort of a unified system of life. So you can see this attribute flowing through this plant here. And I call it attribute life. And that's, for me, a very important thing, is that I can sort of make my own tools with my own names. And so this is moving quite nicely. It's completely interactive, and I'll show you this on the next slide. So while it's playing, I just draw a new curve, and that also moves like this. So this type of work is really important to me, where I can just keep drawing more stuff, and it's just going to work, because I know what the tool is doing. I designed it myself. I troubleshot it, and this is version 612 or something, but I just want to keep it going, make it smooth, make it my own. And I think if you just get started with Houdini, you might think that this is very complicated, but please come over to me and I'll show you that it can be very simple. I think that's it. This is me. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Tin.
My name's Ed, and actually I'm very happy to be here because I don't know if you saw earlier, the title of our studio is actually Tin and Ed, but earlier it said Ed and Tin, so I'm very happy about that.
Ed's been waiting for that for a long time.
Been waiting, a long time. But thanks for coming today.
Yep, and thank you to Houdini for inviting us to be part of this. We feel very honoured. We're artists from Australia. We have been living and working in New York for the past 8 years. And our work really explores our connection to the natural world, all the entanglements of life across biological, geological and cosmic systems. We deeply believe that we're part of these natural systems and not separate from it. And so our work tries to foster this sense of wonder and curiosity for the world around us. And we do this through large-scale immersive and interactive installations and sculpture. Our work explores this permeable boundary between physical and digital spaces as well. And we've exhibited in museums and public spaces all around the world. We also collaborate with brands to create images and videos and installations. And actually this work here, which was a series of windows for Hermes, was also designed in Houdini. In terms of our background and education, we come from a more traditional art background, studying painting, printmaking, drawing, and also design. So even though we come from working with more physical sort of mediums, we're also really interested in emerging technologies and tools. Everything we do with digital tools is mostly self-taught, so a lot of experimentation and play, a lot of online tutorials.
Yeah, we basically just use YouTube, and it's been very fantastic to see Maritz and Paul in real life. I think just the idea of kind of sort of self-taught, really just sort of playing in the tools and really just sort of DIY learning.
Yep, and one of the key tools that we use is Houdini. We use it to simulate biological and geological forms and processes, growing digital life forms, simulating ecosystems, generating intricate textures, and also imagining how things and life can sort of evolve in this sort of and survive on a changing planet. And today we're going to share with you 3 artworks: Deep Field, Multitudes, and We're Made of Time. Houdini plays a central role in all these projects, and we use it as a tool to help us bring invisible processes within nature to life. So we not only use Houdini to create digital screen-based works, but we also create physical tactile objects and sculptures using Houdini as well. So the first project is called Deep Field. It's actually a augmented reality artwork. It was launched at the Getty Museum in LA, and it's traveled to more than 10 countries now. And essentially it's a drawing sort of exercise where participants create drawings on an iPad to prompts that we sort of give them. They're all botanical drawings. They get uploaded to a database in real time and then gets mapped onto 3-dimensional plant structures that then grow within the museum space. The work was created in Unity, but all the plant structures were actually created in Houdini.
Yeah, so sort of like Fibonacci sequences and L systems. Houdini was great to try and sort of figure out how we can sort of get some optimized geometry kind of into Unity.
And so this year we're invited to actually show that work at the Museum of Modern Art, MoMA, in New York. And for that, we were asked to actually create a physical installation within their 6th-floor space. One of the key sort of elements were these 3 very large sort of rugs that brought the space together. There's a close-up on the left, right? And then it was really inspired by these sort of aerial photographies of desert landscapes and also fossils and petroglyphs and geoglyphs and these sort of things. The rugs were designed in Houdini. So we're using Copernicus to design the patterns for the rugs. And essentially just using it as a tool to create sort of tiling sort of patterns and textures.
Yeah, I mean, we've just been using Copernicus like non-stop since it came out. We love that it's kind of integrated in Houdini, and it's procedural. In this instance, it allowed us to scatter just a bunch of drawings that we'd done. So it's just, the fact it's integrated is really awesome for us.
And so once we've designed the rugs, we collaborated with artisans in India who use very traditional rug making techniques that have been passed down for generations, essentially, to actually make the rugs. And so we really love this sort of beautiful sort of interplay and synergy between the present and the past, and the technological and the traditional, where digital processes can become these sort of physical, tactile objects. For the space, we also created these really large inflated sculptures that were suspended within the museum space. We're thinking a lot about how digital tools can create physical objects and spaces as well.
And we use Houdini to sort of model at scale. So this is a model of MoMA. And actually our unit of scale, our unit of measurement is actually tin and eds. I don't know if you can see that there. They're scans of us. So we measure everything in units of tin, really. It's,
And again, we're using Houdini to create these models of these hybrid life forms. The intention was to create these sculptures that sort of blurred the boundaries between something that was terrestrial and marine, animal, plant, fungi. They were sort of ambiguous. We also, again, use Copernicus to create the textures for these models as well. We're very inspired by lichens on rock faces. And then we work really closely with our manufacturing partners to turn these designs into these printed textiles, which are then patterned and then cut into hundreds of pieces and then sewn together to create the sculptures. So this is some installation views when we start to install, and then we get to inflate these sort of monsters, essentially. This is what it looks like all together with the rugs, the soft sculptures, and also the inflatable sculptures as well within the museum space. So these are documentation photos. The inflatable sculptures as well are also kinetic. We design them with varying air pressure zones, which allows us to choreograph the movements just simply by modulating the fan. And so they sort of breathed, they sort of grew and sort of bloomed and sort of deflated and sort of breathed throughout the day as well. Thank you. So our second project that we're going to share with you is actually the first time we used Houdini to create large-scale sort of sculptures. It was really inspired by deep-sea ecologies, especially these things called siphonophores. They're these colonial organisms which are made up of thousands of specialized animals living and functioning together as one. And the work really explores this idea of symbiosis and mutualism and how many organisms live together in these really interconnected systems and how we can learn a lot from that. You know, how do we live together in collaboration rather than competition? So within Houdini, we created these sort of this procedural siphonophore generator, which essentially sort of created these sort of biological components that were sort of generatively sort of put together into these new organisms. So each sculpture is a hybrid life form. It's a composite of multiple forms, creating a new symbiotic sort of system, separate parts living together in these intimate sort of relationships. And then again, we turn them into these really large sculptures that lived inside, throughout the King's Domain Gardens in Melbourne, which is where we're from. There were 13 of them. They were really quite large. And together they formed this newly imagined sort of ecosystem. These deep sea organisms reimagined as land-based, land-dwelling beings coexisting in this sort of new environment. And the work really is, and we, these creatures that live in the deep sea, we don't really think about them enough, but they actually, we have such a big impact on what happens down in the deep the oceans, and they also have an impact on us as well. So the work was really as a way to remind us of these other sort of living things that we share this planet with. They also had programmed lighting, which sort of were inspired by bioluminescence. Bioluminescence is one of the most widespread forms of communication in the deep ocean, in fact. And then the work was also created as a digital screen-based work on screens throughout the park, where the creatures were living, dying, and evolving on these screens as well. And then finally, our project We Are Made of Time, which is a digital screen-based work. It was a public art commission for Moynihan Train Hall. It screened across 30 plus screens throughout the station. This is 4 of them. And Moynihan Train Hall is part of Penn Station in New York, which is America's busiest train station. It's also one that has a really rich and significant sort of history. And so for this work, we wanted to explore the material ecology of the building, looking at the limestone that it was built from, but also looking even more further back and looking at a really expanded sense of time of where that limestone came from and how it was formed. So we're using technology to sort of explore deep time, which is, 4.5 billion years of Earth geological sort of history, but then condensing it into a matter of seconds. And our research took us to Tucson, Arizona, which is the home of the largest gem and mineral show in the world. And there we learnt directly from collectors and miners and fossilers, and brought back a whole bunch of collections from specimens to study, to incorporate into the work.
I don't know if anyone's seen Best in Show, but it's kind of like Best in Show but for rocks. So it was, it was a good vibe.
Yeah,
strong
the people,
vibe.
strong people, characters. And so again, we use Houdini to simulate these geological processes like erosion, stratification, and the slow compression of rock layers over time. Petrification, where wood turns into stone or crystal. So procedural modelling sort of really allowed us to sort of imagine these deep time sort of processes in motion. And over millions of years, everything goes through these sort of radical states of transformation. Everything's in a state of change. And so it allows us to actually see that these things that feel inanimate and very static in human timescales are actually very much alive. And so we also looked at minerals and crystals, and in nature, crystals grow. Growth is influenced by their sort of molecular structure, the environmental conditions such as temperature and pressure, supersaturation of the surrounding solution, and also the colours are influenced by things like the trace impurities and sort of elements within that solution. But in our generator, we created a crystal generator in Houdini. The crystals grow mathematically, and they form these fractal-like structures that echo the branching patterns found in natural sort of mineral formations. And so through that, we were able to sort of generate an infinite amount of sort of crystals for the work.
Yeah, I think something that we love about Houdini is to sort of make a system, and then you can chuck in like just a range of different things into that system. So once the system's built, you can really get just so much kind of content and really great assets out of it.
And we're working at the moment on a project about corals, and we're making a sort of a coral generator. We've created an infinite sort of shell generator as well. So it's really good to be able to create these sort of tools. So this is the last slide. We are essentially the work was shown on these screens, and it really showed it's essentially a collection of rocks and crystals and minerals like you would see in a museum. But beyond that, it was a collection of processes. And so in the museum, they are very static, but here you actually get to see them sort of evolving and changing. All these different timescales sort of shown together in this sort of visual sort of symphony. And again, they were shown throughout all these screens at Moynihan Train Hall. And what it does is it offers us a way to contemplate and remind us of how alive the Earth is. And when we start to use technology to actually allow us to see things that are beyond our own human lifetime and scales, we can sort of start to understand the Earth in sort of new ways. And so, in conclusion, for us, Houdini is this really powerful tool that allows us to simulate the logic of natural systems, from the microscopic to the planetary. We use it to visualize the effects of deep time on the formations of rocks and minerals, and to imagine entirely new life forms and ecosystems. It's a way for us to explore and express the complexity, the beauty, the interconnectedness of the natural world. Thank you.
Thank you.